We're diving into some fascinating stuff today based on material you shared from MenMeetMen.com.
Ah, yes.
I spent some time exploring the site, and it's quite the resource.
It really is.
Offering guys information and connections across a really interesting range, from discrete meetups, audio guides, important safety tips too,
Mm-hmm.
not to mention sections on things like cruising, hookup apps, even saunas.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. It seems to cover a lot of ground for men navigating different kinds of
It
connections.
really seems to be a
Yeah.
comprehensive platform, yeah.
It does. And that breadth of topics on menmeetmen.com, it sort of suggests a real understanding of the diverse ways guys seek connection intimacy,
Right.
which brings us to the specific article that caught our eye. Fluidity isn't just a phase.
Exactly. That title alone sparks so many questions, doesn't it?
Definitely.
So today we're really going to try and unpack this concept of sexual fluidity in men as it's presented in this piece, trying to get beyond those, often rigid labels we tend to use.
Yeah, moving past the simple boxes.
The article's core mission, I think, is exploring the genuine experiences of men whose attractions aren't fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, challenging some of those deeply ingrained assumptions we have about male sexuality.
Absolutely. And considering the range of resources you mentioned from menmeetmen.com, it seems there's a clear interest in exploring these diverse ways men connect.
Seems like it.
So the article starts off by acknowledging something pretty fundamental about us humans,
Hmm.
our tendency to categorize things.
Right, we like labels, gay, straight, bi. It helps make sense of the world.
Exactly. And it helps find communities, where we feel we belong. These categories give us a framework, a shared language.
Yeah, they can be incredibly useful, navigating social stuff, building connections. They give a sense of identity, a way to relate.
But then the article asks this really key question. What happens when those neat categories just don't quite fit?
Hmm.
What about men whose attractions aren't, well, consistent over time?
Hmm.
Or maybe they emerge in unexpected ways that just defy those simple definitions.
Right. It's not saying the labels are wrong, but
Exactly.
yeah.
But it points to experiences that exist outside those well-defined boxes.
And what the article really emphasizes, I thought, was that this isn't just about, young guys experimenting.
No, not just fleeting curiosity.
Right. It gets into what it calls sexual fluidity in men, suggesting something deeper about how attraction can work for some people, a reality beyond just surface exploration.
Which does make you wonder, though, why isn't this talked about more in the, broader conversation about sexuality?
Yeah.
The article touches on the skepticism around male sexual fluidity.
Hmm.
And it's interesting how it contrasts that with the discussion around female fluidity.
Even if that discussion, as the article notes, can sometimes be framed in, problematic ways.
True. But why the difference in societal acceptance?
Right.
Or even just acknowledgement?
That's a really good point. There does seem to be this kind of prevailing cultural narrative. It paints male desire as pretty straightforward.
Like black and white.
Yeah, you like women, you like men, maybe you like both, and that's basically the story. Anything else gets dismissed.
Right. As confusion or denial or even something worse, like greed.
It's like male sexuality is often shown as this fixed thing, unchanging.
But the article really pushes back on that.
Mhm.
It suggests that when you actually talk to men, like really talk,
Yeah.
beyond the initial labels.
You find something more complex.
Exactly. A much more intricate, dynamic reality.
Mm.
You find that for many, attractions just aren't static. It challenges that simple, fixed orientation idea.
And to show this, the article gives some really compelling examples, like Mark.
Yes, Mark.
He identifies as straight, he's married, but sometimes, occasionally,
Mhm.
seeks out same-sex encounters when he travels.
Mhm.
What struck me was how the article pointed out the compartmentalized nature of it for him.
Yeah, purely physical, anonymous.
Right. No connection to his emotional life or his identity back home.
Mark's experience really shows how those societal expectations of, consistent male sexuality can force these experiences underground,
Yeah, into the shadows.
preventing a more, maybe, integrated sense of self. It raises questions about the pressure on men to fit into rigid definitions of straight, even if their desires are more varied.
Then you've got Alex. He identified as gay for years, built a whole life in the gay community,
Right.
and then completely unexpectedly developed an attraction to a woman.
Wow. Yeah,
That really throws a curveball into those fixed categories, doesn't it?
it absolutely does.
It makes you think about how our understanding of ourselves can just evolve in
Totally.
surprising ways.
Alex's story really highlights that unpredictable nature of attraction. and how our identities, even ones we hold really firmly for ages,
Yeah.
can be challenged, redefined by unexpected feelings. Sexuality isn't always a fixed destination, I guess.
And then there's Ben. He describes his attraction as person-specific.
Gender isn't the main thing for him.
Exactly. He's drawn to individuals based on a deeper connection. Their personality, intellect, qualities that just transcend gender.
That's fascinating. Ben's perspective moves beyond the binary, doesn't it? Even beyond the sort of both idea of bisexuality.
It does.
It shifts the focus from categories to the actual person,
Yeah.
suggesting that for some, it's the connection itself that sparks attraction, whatever the gender.
Yeah. Which kind of ties into broader discussions about deconstructing gender and attraction, perhaps.
Could be. It definitely pushes the boundaries.
Right. And again, the article is careful. It emphasizes that highlighting these stories isn't about invalidating anyone's identity.
No. The established labels still matter.
Exactly. It's more about acknowledging that for some men, the reality of desire is less defined, more porous, operates outside those neat boxes we've made.
These individual stories, they really paint a picture that goes beyond the usual categories.
They do.
And the article then suggests that maybe these loud declarations of fixed identity, maybe they're only part of the story.
Like there's something underneath.
Yeah, it mentions a quiet current of fluidity existing beneath the surface of those more public pronouncements, which really makes you reconsider how we understand the male sexuality spectrum.
Maybe it's not so linear or fixed after all.
Maybe not.
So the article then makes a point to clarify something important. Sexual fluidity isn't the same as bisexuality.
Right, that's a key distinction they make.
And it's important to get that straight.
It is. The article explains that bisexuality often involves a concurrent attraction to more than one gender. You can be attracted to men and women, say, at the same time.
Okay.
Fluidity, though, describes a change or a shift in those attraction patterns, either over time or maybe depending on the circumstances.
So like the ice cream analogy they almost used?
Yeah, kind of. Like bisexuality is appreciating both chocolate and vanilla at the same time. Fluidity might be someone who loves chocolate for a while, then their taste shifts. They only want vanilla. Then maybe it shifts back again.
Got it. So it's not necessarily about being attracted to multiple genders simultaneously.
Not always, no.
But more about the focus of that attraction evolving or changing.
Exactly. The article gives examples like someone being exclusively attracted to one gender for a time, then that shifts to another. Or maybe their attractions just broaden or narrow over their life.
It's that dynamic quality.
Precisely. That dynamic, sometimes evolving nature of attraction is what defines fluidity.
Okay. Now, the article also gets into potential triggers, what might cause these unexpected shifts. It starts with emotional connection.
Right. And what's fascinating here is the idea that a really deep emotional bond, that intimacy, trust, understanding, that it can actually override someone's previous patterns of attraction.
Wow.
Which really challenges the idea that male attraction is just, visual or physical.
Definitely. For someone like Alex, that deep friendship with Sarah, the article suggests that played a big role in developing romantic sexual feelings.
It suggests our hearts and minds can sometimes lead our desires down unexpected paths.
Then there are situational factors. The article uses Mark's travel encounters again.
Right? Being in a different environment, away from the usual routines, the usual expectations.
Can create a space where different desires might surface.
Yeah, it highlights how context can really influence our desires and actions. Anonymity, distance, specific social settings, they can lower inhibitions, maybe trigger attractions that wouldn't normally emerge.
And then big life transitions, a major breakup, career change, shift in social circles.
Those can lead to self-reflection, reevaluating your identity.
And that can include sexuality, too.
Absolutely. Those pivotal moments often make us question who we are, what we want. It makes sense that these big changes could impact how we see our own attractions.
The article also mentions exposure and experience. Just trying new things, stepping outside the comfort zone.
And maybe unlocking parts of your attraction you didn't know were there.
Yeah, it broadens the scope of what that male sexuality spectrum might look like for some people.
That element of self-discovery through new experiences.
Yeah.
It's so important. Sometimes, it's by venturing into the unknown that we learn the most about ourselves, the nuances of our own desires.
And they even briefly touch on the more speculative side, hormonal or biological changes.
Yeah, they mention it, but acknowledge it's more speculative. Our understanding there is still pretty limited.
So it's not the main focus?
No, the focus seems much more on the psychological, emotional, and situational factors. Those seem more directly influential based on the article.
Okay. So overall, it sounds like the triggers for these shifts are really complex, deeply personal, not just one simple cause.
Absolutely not. It's usually a mix, isn't it? Psychological, emotional, situational things all interacting in unique ways for each person.
Now, the article doesn't shy away from the difficulties, the real challenges men experiencing fluidity can face.
No, it gets into the pressures
Yeah.
from both straight and gay communities, driven by those more rigid ideas about sexuality.
Right. This is where the social stuff gets really tricky.
It is. The article highlights this, like challenging position fluid men can be in. From the straight world, like they say, any same-sex encounter can just be seen as secretly gay.
Yeah, no room for nuance.
Very little.
Hmm.
Mark's situation shows that potential for misunderstanding, for judgment.
And then from the gay community, a whole other set of challenges.
Suspicion, being called a tourist, or a closet case.
Like you're not fully committing.
Exactly. Even resentment sometimes.
Hmm.
This idea that they might be benefiting from straight privilege while still, engaging with the gay community.
That sounds incredibly isolating, feeling like you don't fully belong in either space. What kind of emotional toll does the article suggest this takes?
Well, it mentions feelings of invalidation, right? Not being seen or understood.
Mm-hmm.
It can lead to internal conflict, questioning yourself, being reluctant to be open about it.
For fear of judgment.
Yeah, or rejection. It does remind me a bit of the challenges bisexual people face, feeling accepted by both straight and gay communities.
But maybe with an extra layer.
Perhaps. An added layer of instability, maybe, because of the shifting nature of the attraction itself.
So it sounds like fluid men can end up feeling marginalized from multiple sides, maybe even more so than bi men who, as you said, already face their own hurdles.
The article makes a strong case for that, this sort of double marginalization. And the lack of clear language, the lack of societal understanding, it just adds to the invisibility.
Makes it really hard to have open conversations or find a sense of belonging.
Incredibly difficult.
And that lack of understanding must hit the dating world hard too, right? How do you even start to explain this on a profile in early conversations?
Exactly. When so much emphasis is on those fixed categories.
Gay, straight, bi. Pick one.
Right. The fear of judgment, the difficulty just articulating it, the potential for rejection. It can lead guys to simplify things, use conventional labels even if they don't fit perfectly.
Or just avoid dating altogether.
Yeah. It shows the real-world impact of this lack of broader understanding and acceptance.
Okay, so to really nail down what we're talking about, the article is careful to distinguish fluidity from a few other related ideas, starting with being in the closet.
Yes, a crucial distinction. The article stresses that with fluidity, the attractions themselves might genuinely change over time.
Whereas a closeted gay man...
His attractions are consistent same-sex, but he keeps them hidden due to social pressure, fear, whatever. The internal experience, the desire itself, is different.
Got it. And it's also important to separate fluidity from simple experimentation. It's not always just a phase.
Precisely. Exploration is part of many journeys, sure, but fluidity can be a more enduring pattern of shifting attraction that continues long after adolescence, well into adulthood.
So not just trying things out, it can be an ongoing part of how attraction works for someone.
Right.
And finally, the term down low or DL, the article clarifies that too.
Yeah, it says that while some men who identify as DL might also experience fluidity, the term DL itself refers more to a behavioral strategy.
Like keeping things secret for privacy or cultural reasons.
Exactly. It doesn't necessarily describe the underlying nature of their desires, which could be fluid, gay, bi, whatever. It's about behavior, not necessarily the attraction pattern itself.
That distinction is really important because mixing these things up dismisses the unique reality of fluidity.
It does. And it ignores the need to challenge those rigid labels that just don't capture the full spectrum of experience.
Which brings us, naturally, to the language problem.
Mm-hmm.
The article points out we really lack widely understood, non-pathologizing terms for this.
That language gap is a huge barrier. Huge. Terms like sexually fluid or questioning exist, sure, but...
They can feel a bit inadequate or don't capture the nuances.
Exactly. And even terms like heteroflexible or homoflexible, sometimes they can feel like they trivialize it or suggest a level of choice that might not always feel accurate.
And as the article says, this often leads men to just avoid labels entirely.
Or, like we said with dating, use conventional labels just for simplicity, even if they don't really fit their experience.
This lack of shared vocabulary, It really fuels the invisibility, doesn't it?
It really does. Harder to find community, harder to articulate your experience, harder to feel validated when you don't have the words.
So it really highlights this ongoing need. We need to develop a more nuanced, more inclusive way to talk about these aspects of sexuality.
Absolutely. Better language would mean more recognition, more respect, more understanding for the diverse experiences of men whose attractions aren't fixed.
So the article wraps up by really emphasizing sexual fluidity in men is real. It's a valid experience.
Not necessarily confusion or indecisiveness.
Right. But a genuine way desire can manifest for some people.
It's about broadening our collective understanding of the male sexuality spectrum, acknowledging it goes beyond just gay, straight, bi.
It suggests attraction can be much more dynamic, more responsive than we often assume.
Yeah. And it also challenges those often very rigid, narrow ideas about masculinity, the kind that don't allow for these kinds of shifts or attractions outside tight boxes.
What I found insightful was how the article acknowledges the difficulties. Navigating a world that wants neat categories.
The potential for judgment, the lack of easy labels.
Yeah, but it also points to the potential for, like, liberation in accepting your own true desires however they show up.
Without feeling you have to conform to what everyone else expects.
It ends with this really powerful image. Desire is a flowing current.
Something ongoing, dynamic.
Regardless of whether we have the perfect word for every twist and turn.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It captures that sense of something natural, ever-changing, not always easily contained or defined.
So, to bring our deep dive to a close, this article from MenMeetMen.com has really shone a light on the complexities of sexual fluidity in men,
It really has.
challenging those fixed notions of gay, straight, bi, exploring the diverse realities of attraction for many individuals. We've looked at the societal pressures
The challenges of understanding and defining it.
and that critical need for more inclusive language, more understanding.
Exactly. The article is a valuable reminder that human sexuality is multifaceted. Our understanding keeps evolving. It pushes us to move beyond binary thinking, embrace a more nuanced view.
And if you, the listener, found this discussion interesting, maybe thought-provoking, and want to explore these topics more, I really encourage you to check out MenMeetMen.com. As we said at the start, it's a genuinely comprehensive resource. Beyond this insightful article, you'll find those audio guides we mentioned, practical safety tips, info on various ways men connect discreetly.
Right, cruising spots, hookup apps, sonoculture.
Exactly. It really seems like a platform that gets the diverse ways men seek connection and information.
It seems well-rounded.
So yeah, head over to menmeetmen.com to dive deeper.